I feel like the crypto industry is really being misunderstood in a lot of ways, and crypto experts too, and some of them have horrible rep. How do you build trust to take the industry to the next level?
I think that the key thing is you don't want to make it too complex. You want to solve a problem. You don't want to offer technology for its own sake. You don't want to use jargon.
So what's the most common question you get in front of a board of a traditional bank, let's say?
I think the big one for me is very conceptual, which is what's the difference between using a stablecoin for payments and Bitcoin? And people confuse those two worlds, and very logically so, because if you're not living and breathing this industry, they look the same from afar.
So I know we prepared, but let me explain what I'm expecting here.
Okay.
I've spent my whole career in wealth management with technical expertise being misunderstood, right? So you have financial advisors that talk to you about performance in different products, and it's hard to understand. And there is a balancing act between appearing as an expert and being actually engaging and people understanding what you're doing. And here what I wanted to talk to you about is two things. One is that because I feel like the crypto industry is really being misunderstood in a lot of ways, and crypto experts too, and some of them already. And then how do you build trust to actually how do you build trust to take the industry to the next level? Because that's what the industry needs.
Yeah.
So.
Yes.
And then you said you wanted to discuss a little bit, and we can talk about also about how you think that fintech is the entry point for crypto in a way.
Yep.
Okay, good. First, let's start about you. Tell
Okay.
me a little bit about you, Andy Werner. I know we call you the crypto expert or the crypto queen of Miami. Let's put it that way. But tell me a little bit about you and how you got here.
I think there's too many crypto people in Miami for me to be anywhere near the king of crypto in Miami.
Well, you're a crypto educator,
I do my best. I've been in the industry for quite a while. I like to say that I'm in fintech from before it was called fintech. I actually got my start in the mobile industry. And back in the day, they used to be called mobile payments to distinguish them from in-person or online payments. And that eventually just became payments. So I've been at all kinds of companies, from large banks, big tech, including large banks like Citi, big tech like Meta. And then I joined the startup world and have been all over the place. And for the past several years, I've been full-time in crypto. And the way that I see it, where we're going, is that all of financial services will have blockchain underneath the hood. We like to say in a very boring way, but the best kind of boring. You want financial services in a lot of regards to be boring. You don't want it to be exciting. You want it to just work. And that's what I'm working on now, allowing blockchain to give people access to financial services in a seamless manner.
What does that mean?
Essentially, you have fintech apps that are competing with banks for the traditional kind of suite of offerings, including holding your money, giving you a return. So it's like a savings account. Now we have investments. We have tokenized real world assets. We have investment products such as DeFi coming onto the blockchain. There's a big announcement this week by a Miami-based company. So we're seeing a lot more of financial services coming onto the blockchain. What we believe at Transact is that the layer that is going to give people the ability to participate in all of those services will be on the blockchain, doing things like authenticating you are who you say you are, making sure that the risk is within the bounds for the application that's providing the service, giving you a place to hold your money, giving you a place to move that money around, to make a payment, to send a remittance, to maybe receive your payroll. And then when you have your payroll, maybe you want to keep it on the blockchain because that will allow you to invest and get a return. And all of this, to us sitting here in Miami, USA, is like, oh, we already have that. But if you're living in a place like Argentina, where we're both from, or parts of Africa, parts of, the Middle East, where there's, also like countries like Turkey, et cetera, just having access to that is already a big deal. So what we want to provide is a way to get all those people onto the blockchain so that they can access these financial services.
So basically, you're saying in the US, it's not going to be adopted that fast because most people in the US do have access to a bank account. But internationally, as we have seen already, it has been being adopted because it's a problem to solve, because there is a problem to solve. But what path do you see for crypto in the US?
It's a great question. I don't like to try to predict the future in that regard of kind of playing a guessing game, but I agree with you that this technology solves a bigger issue outside of the US, where people cannot access a dollar, or they cannot access a safe recurring yield instrument like a high yield savings account, which is something that's very easy to do here. But there are a lot of things that current financial services haven't figured out. A good example to me is, why can I not send a wire on the weekend? Or why does my bank withhold something that I'm trying to do, for instance, in terms of cross-border remittances? Or why are they impeding me from gaining access to these tools? Or there's a significant, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but there's a significant amount of people in the US that are unbanked, which is a crazy thing to consider, but they're there. And maybe what we can do is lower the barriers, make it more closer to the experience they want, or more seamless to access these financial tools. So to us, that we are fully banked, probably many banks, maybe we have several credit cards, several bank accounts, et cetera. All of this is something that is perhaps not quote unquote broken. But at the same time, I'll give you another example. People use Venmo more more gladly than they would use Zelle.
Yes.
Because the user experience is better. Mm-hmm. And I believe crypto gets us in that direction. So perhaps you have a better user experience when you use Robinhood to invest than when you use Schwab. And I think that's the kind of thing that we can see the blockchain offering that will allow people in the US to adopt the technology. But for now, I agree with your statement. The product market fit is higher in countries that are not US denominated, dollar denominated.
But how do you go about building the trust into this new system? Like, you're asking people to manage their money in a completely different way. And I feel like both fintechs and even banks sometimes, in the purchasing process for these new technologies, the executives are sitting there and they don't understand what they are trying to do. They don't understand the technology. But they have to trust whoever comes in front of you, like you, and say, no, but you can do this on the blockchain. How do you build that trust?
I think that the key thing is, you don't want to make it too complex. You want to solve a problem. You don't want to offer technology for its own sake. You don't want to use jargon. You don't want to use terms that generate lack of trust, like decentralized, permissionless, number go up, or all of these kind of like very jargony expressions in our industry. Rather say, you know what, we're going to help you move money 24/7, 365. We're going to reduce the cost of, cross-border finance. We're going to eliminate the need for correspondent banking. We're going to give people access to these tools in a more efficient way. And we're going to allow people that perhaps today don't have access to certain investment instruments in a safe and secure way to do so, without ignoring the fact that they care about things like compliance, and they care about things like risk, and they care about things like regulatory security. Exactly. So coming up with these concepts for ideological purposes, which was perhaps the genesis of
blockchain,
of the industry, yes, for sure, is not going to get these big institutions to adopt the technology. Rather, what is giving them that comfort that this is a better way to serve their customers, that you're actually serving a need, that you're actually making it a better user experience.
So what's the most common question you get in front of a board of a traditional bank, let's say?
I think the big one for me is very conceptual, which is what's the difference between using a stablecoin for payments and Bitcoin? And people confuse those two worlds, and very logically so, because if you're not living and breathing this industry, they look the same from
Yeah.
afar. And true, they all use decentralized ledgers and blockchain technology, but they're very different use cases. So, for instance, Bitcoin is very difficult to use for things like certain kinds of payments. It's very slow and expensive compared to high throughput blockchain. But they don't want to worry about that. What they want to do is offer, like I was saying earlier, a better customer experience or a better service to someone that's trying to make a payment, or a better way for someone to send money back home. So that is what they care about. And a
So
lot of that
basically,
works.
you wanna focus the conversations on the result of a product and not the architecture of the product, or the way that you build it behind scenes, basically. And that's a way you face the conversations.
100%. And you certainly don't want to get into the place of having a big debate about government or about monetary policy
Oh
or
yeah.
about why Bitcoin is better than gold or gold is better than Bitcoin, and why you want to speculate on, fake internet money.
Right.
So that world is very different from the world where at least I spend all of my professional life, which is talking to banks, talking to regulators, talking to governments about opening up entities, getting licenses, getting bank accounts, and enabling all of these platforms, because we're a B2B company. So what we do is we give other people the ability to get their consumers onto the blockchain.
So what's the biggest success case you've seen that for you is you're proud of?
I think our MetaMask integration is very exciting because
Your
that's
what?
MetaMask.
Okay.
It's
Slow down there.
it's a Web3 wallet, and it
Okay.
essentially acts like a bank on the blockchain. And the experience that someone has when they're onboarding onto this platform is very similar to opening a bank account, funding that bank account, and then making payments, making investments. They have a credit card. So they have all of
So
these
I've
tools.
gone through the experience of trying to open a digital wallet. I don't remember like what I wanted to buy at that point, but it was hell.
It should
Yeah.
not be hell. And that's what
It
we
was
work really
hell.
hard to do.
Yeah.
So
So
you
right now, basically, you're saying that you improve the user experience so that it is just a wallet that opens up as a bank account.
It's not technically a bank account.
No, but
Well,
it's a deposit
right.
place.
It's a place that you
for
deposit
digital
funds.
currency.
Exactly. And what
Okay.
you're getting on the other side is a tokenized dollar, which we can discuss. And that tokenized dollar, the easiest way I like to
What's the
summarize
difference
it,
between the tokenized dollar and the stable coin?
it's a stable coin. Yeah, that's what I mean.
Okay.
So it's a digital dollar, which is a dollar with more features. You
Yeah.
can do more things with a dollar on the blockchain than you can with a dollar off the blockchain. It's more flexible, and it's programmable, and you can do all these things. It's very fungible, etc. But once you have access to that in a seamless way, people can access all of these tools without having to go through that experience that you just described as hell. So we've come a long way as an industry. I think there's still a ways to go, but a lot of companies, mine included, are working very hard to bring that barrier down and to make it as easy as onboarding to, I don't know, Target's card program.
Exactly.
Right?
So let me ask you, how hard is it for your clients then to sell that wallet when you mention it is on blockchain? Or, well, no, you said it was digital currency anyway, so it's people that are looking to store digital currency, correct?
Yep.
Okay, and most of your users are international, I suppose?
I would say yes. So we're a B2B2C company.
Yeah, so it's their users.
Their
okay.
users are international.
Yeah.
And what they want to do is, traditionally, our company is 6.5, 7 years old. So for the early part, I would say people were using our platform to access digital native currencies like Bitcoin and Ethereum and others. And now what we're seeing is more and more of our volume going to stablecoin and payments and remittances. So this bucket is, I'm speculating, I'm store of value. I think that this is a good investment, a good place to park something. And on this side, it's okay, I care about a remittance, a cross-border payment, or payroll.
Yeah.
And
And
basically,
the average user, I suppose, is still on the younger side.
that's a good question. I don't know the average age. I'm going to look into that actually. I'm very curious. Because if you think about a remittance, the user, for instance, on the receiving side
It
might be
has to be older. Yeah.
maybe someone's parents.
Yeah.
Perhaps someone is working in the US and they have their parents in the Philippines or in Mexico, these huge remittance corridors, or in India. We have a lot of Indian users. We have a big Indian office in Bangalore. So we're seeing a lot of volume there. And that might have a little bit of a mixed age bracket. Whereas perhaps traditionally, when you're talking about people that are speculating, perhaps they
Right.
were on the younger side.
Yeah.
So we're seeing migration. But to me, like I said, it's like more boring. Like this is less interesting in the like exciting speculative space. It's not going to go to the moon, but we don't want it to go to the moon. We want it to
Right.
just work.
Right. And so if you were on the other side of the table, like either banks or fintechs looking to implement some sort of crypto future or blockchain future, what would you be asking? What are the key questions, and how would you go about finding the right solution?
I think the key consideration are some of the topics we touched on, which is like the risk and the compliance and the regulation. And then, of course, the benefit, right? So you start with, what's the counterparty risk? Who are the players in the middle? How compliant are you? So there's a strenuous, and we do this every day, by the way, KYB process. And it goes both ways. We KYB our partners and our partners KYB us. So it's not your business. And they ask for a lot of documentation. They want to know who's behind the company, where we're incorporated, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we have, I think, like a dozen entities around the world and 5 or 6 licenses, including in, we have MTLs in the US and an MSB, and we're licensed in Canada and the UK and Europe and Hong Kong. So we're very compliant in that regard. So we're very used to this. So all of these companies want to see that. And then, of course, once you're like, okay, this is something that I'm comfortable with, nobody wants to lose their job over implementing new technology. They're like, why should I even consider this? Yeah. And I think there it's really, really important that the benefit is outweighing that perceived risk.
Right.
So it has to be.
So it has to solve a problem too.
It has to actually solve a problem. This is not technology for its own sake. We're not like vibe coding something for fun on a weekend.
No technology should be technology for its own sake. No project should be technology for its own sake.
I mean, that has a place if you're an inventor tinkering in your garage and you're playing around. That's fine. But if you're
in organizations,
if you're a bank incorporating a new technology, it should not be like a passion project that you just think is fun.
Right.
It should really
or the latest trend.
Or the latest trend. You definitely don't want to be like following fads if you're in financial services.
Well, the market evolves extremely fast. Mm-hmm. What is obvious today that you feel wasn't obvious 5 years ago?
I think the big one is like going away from that ideology that we were talking about earlier and saying, no, this should be solving a problem, product market fit, and financial services is that answer. Today, there's a lot of debate about what else blockchain technology should be doing, but it's very logical if what you're doing is tokenizing real world assets, currencies, fiat currencies, especially the dollar, then what you're going to get is financial services. And you get things like new kinds of payments that are enabled, et cetera. So that's number one. And number two, I would definitely point to, again, from the ideological perspective, that we want regulation. We want governments to tell us what are the bounds. We want to have a very clear set of guidelines that companies such as mine and others can follow to give our institutional clients comfort that we are regulatorily compliant with the rules of that jurisdiction. And that to me is something that goes against perhaps the cypherpunk ethos that started, the blockchain industry, but that today mean that we have all of this adoption that is very exciting to me.
So yeah, if I think about it from the perception point of view, it started as let's take down the financial services, structure and give it back to the people. And then the message was, let's use this to make ourselves rich and invest and do a fast turnaround. And then it was, let's fundraise with all of the issuance of these coins and make ourselves rich fast again. And now everybody is all over stablecoins, and it's all about stablecoins. And I feel like stablecoins have become the synonymous of let's just digitalize the banking system. Is that correct?
I think your narrative is spot on in all of the cycles that you described. And what we're getting to the point that we're at now is that really we're not replacing, but we're complementing the financial system. So what we're doing is doing things like weekend settlement between financial institutions and facilitating trade finance and giving people access to a yield that is reasonable.
Right.
So whenever you see a DeFi tool, DeFi is decentralized finance, that is offering you a yield that seems too good to be true, it probably is. And in the past, there have been these crazy yields of 20, 30, whatever percent. And you're like, wait,
Where does they get the return?
where are they getting those returns? And it's probably very risky. On the other hand, if I'm getting a 5% return, maybe they're taking a marginal risk, but that's like, 1.5% more than the risk-free rate. And I'm like, okay, that's something that I can get behind. So that to me is changing a little bit how people think about the industry, where we're going away from this speculation towards this utility.
Right. So how do you feel the industry should build up? We talked about not using jargon, etc. And we talked about how the industry started in a way that it didn't help in a way and it popped. How do you feel they should be, the industry should be building the trust to continue growing?
I think it's really a lot of stability, a lot of regulation, no blowups, nobody going to jail, no companies disappearing, no
Hopefully.
no
Okay.
big explosions,
Yeah.
and a lot of institutional adoption. And I also like it when I see use cases that are using the technology without being explicit about it, where it's just happening.
Okay. Tell me some more examples about that.
So there's one that's like a little bit silly, but I thought was pretty cool, which is if you have an Amex card, they have a thing called Amex Passport. And what they do is they look at your transactions and they figure out where you've traveled and they give you a little stamp as if you had, a stamp in your passport. But those are tokens on the blockchain. I don't know what that's for. But instead of just
It's a little game.
it's very silly in the sense of it's not really solving much. But I was like looking at this use case and thinking, I feel about it a little bit differently if they tell me, okay, there's a wallet created by a reputable player where there's something, maybe it's an NFT or whatever that exists, that it's mine, that I can later move around. Maybe there's an integration down the road, I don't know, from some other player, and I can import my stamps and do something with them. I don't know. Again, this is a really good example to me because it doesn't like necessarily try to fix the world. And you don't need to know that there's blockchain there, but it's being provided by Amex, which is a very reputable, trustworthy company. And that kind of thing to me is interesting. People don't want to worry about which blockchain technology they're using. Is this on Solana? Is this on Optimism? Am I using, Stellar? Or am I using Ethereum mainnet? It's like, what? People don't want to worry about their keys. Nobody wants to think about gas. So all of these concepts to me needs to be totally abstracted away, and it needs to just work the same way, like I was saying earlier, you use your digital bank today. So it needs to be smooth. It needs to work like Venmo. It needs to work like Robinhood. That's what the technology needs to kind of feel like to someone if we're going to get people to actually use it and get that value.
Yeah, it needs to be just, I don't care if you like, I remember when they launched, what is it called? I forgot the name. Wait. The payment, the automatic payment on the treasury.
FedNow?
FedNow. Okay. I remember when they launched FedNow.
Yeah.
And the only thing they needed to say was, now we're gonna, make the transactions faster. But they launched the whole thing and they explained the whole structure behind it. And it was like, so who cares? It actually made them look older and worse when they did that, because it's like, well, that should have happened a long time ago.
I agree.
So what is it that, if whenever you meet an entrepreneur or a fintech founder, what's your main recommendation in terms of implementing blockchain or crypto?
That's a great question. I think startups have very limited resources and a limited surface on which to play where they need to distinguish themselves. And I think that they don't need to necessarily nowadays. I'm old enough to remember the first .com boom where you had to set up servers in your office, connect them to the internet yourself, buy a database. You had to buy it and hire coders to do everything. Like, so it was very, very expensive to do things that today you could probably, again, vibe code in an afternoon in your home without spending a dime, right? Other than the AI. So that to me is how people should be building today. So one of the most interesting things I'm seeing related to those wallets that we were talking about that allow you to do payments is you can offer something very close to a banking experience on the blockchain by integrating with a few providers kind of off the shelf, and issue a crypto card and allow people to make payments, which will be accepted anywhere that a POS terminal is accepted. And you can offer them a way to have a savings account and a checking account.
So you're saying that anybody in their garage is able to build that?
To build that stack.
Yeah.
And we're seeing dozens of crypto cards come out and crypto neobanks, and they don't have to reinvent the wheel. They can literally take all of these tools and basically combine them, and then their secret sauce can be whatever they decide to be their secret sauce.
Right, but that's a problem I see too, because it's too easy to build a product or too hard, doesn't matter. You build the product, it's your technology, all is great, but they are not thinking about how people are gonna actually interact with the product and how are they gonna gain their trust in order for them to use it.
Yeah, and that's tricky. And to me, they have to earn it. They have to add something. There needs to be a reason. I personally, my wife bullies me for this because I open every single wallet and every single account that comes across because I like to test them. And I think it's something that I learned every time, like how some people have solved, the part where you have to prove your identity and scan your driver's license, or how you fund the account, which is the work that we do. A lot of what we do is giving you an easy way
to fund,
to get money from your bank account or from your card onto the blockchain. So that's the part that I'm interested in the most. How you verify your identity, what the risk engine is. So all of that is to me like market research. So anyway, I test them out, but then I'm like, okay, what are you doing that's different? Are you giving me more of a yield? Are you giving me a better experience? What's the surface? What kind of promo are they doing? So these are all kind of it's still a little bit of a wild, wild west where everybody's competing and trying to come up with different ways to do something a little bit different. And to me, my cop out answer to your question would be this technology, this platform is relatively new still, and it's hard to predict what people are going to build. But today it's so easy to take, again, like AI technology plus crypto to do things that in the past would take hundreds of people, 2 years to do. So I'm excited to see what they come up with. Yeah.
Okay. But now you open all of these accounts. You're exposed to all of these platforms and executives and entrepreneurs. Give me the two most common mistakes they make.
I think the number one is thinking that users care about the technology itself. What they want to do is have a place to park their money, to invest it, to make a payment, to cash in, cash out, to have a card. They want to get a return on their holdings. So they want some pretty fundamental basic things that a financial services platform should offer. So that's number one. And then number two, I would think, is the lack of differentiation. Everybody thinks that it's about branding and just having kind of a cool logo and maybe doing a promo and giving away some money. But to me, there needs to be something else. Otherwise, I'm not going to really do it. Even the big players like Robinhood has their card, Coinbase has their card, Gemini has their card. And I'm like, yeah, but I also have one from Citi or from Chase or from American Express, and I'm getting pretty good value. So again, they're trying to differentiate, and then they have to compete with all of these other neobanks and all of these crypto card programs. So to me, it's still very much in flux. Again, all of us here in the US have multiple credit cards. I've tried them, I use them, I see why they exist, and I see what they're trying to accomplish. Like Robinhood's is pretty cool. It's like solid gold, but then Coinbase made one that's solid metal, and it has the white paper, the Bitcoin white paper
But why
stamped on
would
it.
you make physical cards anymore too? So it's like,
I mean, physical cards still have a place. We're still a ways away from having them disappear. But to your point, I think it's going to be pretty sweet when you can be a contractor of some sort, perhaps getting payroll on the blockchain. And when you go to pay, that person also accepts stablecoin. And when you go to invest, you're getting stablecoin and getting a yield on the blockchain. And then you never have to actually exit the blockchain, not even to go to the grocery store. But that still is a future that we haven't reached yet.
right. And what would take for us to reach that future? Because I've heard about it a lot.
I think it needs to really, really be a better experience. For instance, you know, how expensive it is for certain merchants to accept credit cards. And there is still a delay in when they get paid. So they're paying to accept cards, and then they're getting the funds in whatever T plus something, depending on a bunch of factors. But if you can make that a lot smoother for certain, you know, today you can accept stablecoin payments on the internet using big payment platforms, including like Stripe. So that's pretty cool. But I don't think until all merchants are really like on board with this, we will see a world where you can really live your financial life completely on the blockchain. I think
I
there's
was
still a ways
talking
away.
to an entrepreneur that told me that the biggest issue or the biggest growth determinant in the US for that, you know, whole ecosystem are Visa and MasterCard. Do you agree?
I think that they are actually doing something very smart, which is adopting the technology and using stablecoins for settlement. But to your point, until those two companies are really, really participating all in, we're not going to see anything
Well, they make
materially
too much
change.
money out of the merchant fees. So
They do.
To,
They do.
To change that, it has to be a whole other business proposition.
Well, what's interesting to me, if you think about merchants that have distribution, which is a key element here, think of a Walmart, think of Target, etc., Amazon, and they could issue their own stablecoin. And that stablecoin, if they're holding those funds in treasury bills, overnight repos, money market funds, etc., they could gain a yield from their holding themselves, and they can give those stablecoin they can give their users stable access to those stablecoins. And therefore, if someone, for instance, opts to pay at Target using stablecoin, it's more kind of like a loyalty program in a sense where instead of going through the networks and having to pay an interchange fee, which is pretty low for a big merchant like Target, but they don't have to go through those rails. And therefore, Target is saving a lot of money plus what they're making on the holdings, and they can pass those savings on to the consumer and say, if you, excuse me, if you use this payment mechanism, I'm going to give you a whatever % discount on your purchase. And that's very powerful. So in that world, I think that we can start to have an interesting discussion. With the regulation that passed, I think we're going to see more and more of these huge merchants issue their own stablecoin. And once they have that, it'll be exciting to see how interoperable it is, how much people can move them off of these platforms. So it's not just like a closed loop, you know, like Starbucks points or whatever they're called, Starbucks bucks, but rather an actual, you know, ERC20 token, an actual stablecoin on the blockchain that you can send around, that you can move, and that you can do whatever you want with.
If I were to give you $15 million today to start your own business, what would you start?
15 or 50?
15.
15.
That's little? Too little?
It's a great question. I think that the thing that interests me the most about my job is that, again, we're both from Latin America, and we see I would say how expensive it is to be unbanked, and how expensive it is to not have access to these tools and have to make every payment in cash and have no way to save, and have what little saving you have eroded by inflation and devaluation, and getting charged an obscene amount of money if you want to send a remittance, and all of this kind of basically friction that you see for everything from, again, saving, but also like just paying a bill. If you have to, and we, you know, in our country, you have to wait in line sometimes to pay a bill with a piece of paper for like a small kiosk. So because you don't have these tools. So that to me is still a huge,
Untapped.
untapped potential of humanity, of financial prosperity, of all of these people that have to pay the being poor tax, right? And anything that you can do to help that, I think, is really powerful. Again, in majority of the emerging world, the global south, you still see that. So I'd probably look at that space. That's what I like about my job, is the financial inclusion aspect of how you can really make people's lives better with these tools. It's not about giving some crypto degen 100% yield on their, Bored Ape NFT.
But which is your favorite business that you've seen, or the both? I have two questions for you. Like your favorite business that you've seen in crypto, and one that you've seen has done a very cool or a very smart idea to scale.
So I think a controversial choice for my favorite business in crypto is Tether, because they have had the ability and the vision to get ahead of the stablecoin game before anyone else at scale. That's why they have so much more market cap than anyone else.
So let's say, what did Tether do?
What they did is basically make their stablecoin the de facto way that everybody else traded. So they started with being the, interchange pair. I think technically there were other stablecoins before them, but they're the ones that were the most successful in gaining that scale. And essentially what they've done is a version, like a very basic version of what I described, which is give people in emerging markets access to dollars. And I like that. And then they've actually invested back into the industry. They've invested in all of these countries, and they're still early, but they're, doing a lot to promote that. And I respect that. And in a way that, doesn't necessarily go through a traditional path. Now they've launched in the US, and they have a token that's domestic, but for the longest time they didn't. And I think that that's a very powerful kind of almost value to humanity. Of course, they could be doing more. Every corporation could be doing more. But again, I think you have to recognize that they've had that success. So that's a pretty cool. And then another one I would say more on the smaller scale is companies like Felix Pago and Dollar App, both of which are here in Miami. And they are doing really good work to allow people to send remittances. And that also speaks to what I was describing earlier. And they also do it in a way that we talked about, which is non-complex. It's as easy as sending a WhatsApp message. And that to me is very, very important, because if you want these people that will benefit the most to use this technology, you can't be asking them to have seed phrases in a lockbox in their safe, in their bank. So it has to be easy to use, has to be safe, it has to really solve a problem.
That's a perfect segue into Miami. So, what do you think the reality is versus what we've been living through? I think that in Miami, we live through all of the phases of the crypto story. Right now, it has like consolidated and settled down in a good way, I feel. But what do you see? What do you see is happening, and what can we do to make it grow?
It's a great question. Transact is headquartered in Miami. I work in an office. I go every day. Our CEO is here, and we love Miami. Miami has a lot of benefits, and there's a lot that we could still see more of, we can improve on. I would especially look at having more operators. I think capital is available in Miami. There was an X thread this week that I saw where I think some people were talking about how many venture capitalists are in the city, and there's more than 100, and there's a long list, and that's wonderful. We also need the people that are going to do the work. So I think on the younger side, I think there's a lot of things that help people want to come to Miami and live here, but I think we still need a little bit more time. Cycles are long, and we want to stay away from the hype. And whenever people ask me, for instance, how I like it living here, I say that, yes, you have things that Miami has a rightfully earned reputation for, but then you can also get into a very healthy lifestyle, a very, focused way to live your life in a positive way, more perhaps fitness and wellness oriented than party oriented. So that's an important aspect to me. The other thing I would say is that as a city, there's still perhaps it's a little bit more expensive than it should be, and there's a little bit more traffic than there should be, and there's a couple of things more on the municipal level that would be great. But I honestly think that if we can get more builders and more people that are actually going to do the work at these companies, we can get to scale rather than just have hype where we have like a big event and we talk about we have a bull, a crypto bull,
I know.
but what we
But
want
it's
is
just sitting there.
it's just sitting there. We want it to represent more than perhaps a certain conference.
Okay, good. Well, last question. Where, I don't know if you have kids. You do? Okay. Where do you see them, interacting financially in, 15 years? How do you see them managing their money?
Wow, that's a broad question. I hope that what we achieve is more financial education. We were talking about how to get adoption and how to get people to actually trust the technology. And I think it's a lot of user education. And by giving it by reducing the barrier to entry so much, essentially with blockchain technology, anyone with a smartphone can open something very, very close to a bank account. Whereas even 10 years ago, that wasn't the case.
Right.
It used to be, and I've worked on projects in past lives that tried to do things like digital banking, that you cannot open a bank account without going to a branch, without having someone look at you in the eye.
Several banks still is the case.
That's still the case, which is unreal. Exactly. So that's unimaginable today. So in 15 years, it's hard for me to predict, but what I hope for humanity and for my kids and for everyone that is going to participate in this ecosystem is that they understand these financial instruments in a way that will allow them to create prosperity for themselves and for their families by doing things like saving and investing and having, a way to store their hard-earned currency without it having, devaluating. Exactly.
Well, I lied. It's not the last question. This is the last question. So how do you think professionals in the industry should be behaving right now? What do we need to do to expand that financial education?
I think that there should be a lot more of safe and sound adoption of technology and not talking of these get rich quick or, gold rush type dynamics. And to me, that means solving problems.
That's the media world today. That's what everybody...
Yeah, it's clickbait all over the place. So to me, what it means is boring, under the hood. Right. It means companies using stablecoin to settle. It means trade finance. It means giving people access to a way to pay their bills and not necessarily say, buy this meme coin because it's going to go to the moon. I don't think that does anyone any favors. Good.
Okay. Is there any other question I should have asked you today that do you think we should cover?
No, I think we did a pretty good job of covering every aspect of how to make this industry more mainstream, perhaps in the best way possible. Having said that, of course, by becoming more mainstream and becoming more regulated and becoming more, adopted by big institutions, it becomes a little bit less exciting, and that perhaps has impacts in the market. And we've seen a little bit of a downturn, and I'm being very, minimizing how big of a bear market we might be in. I personally don't trade. I don't speculate. I buy and hold is what I mean by I don't trade.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not.
But you are in crypto, I imagine.
Very much so. And what I mean by that is I think that these cycles come and go, and what we need to be doing is building these actual use cases that solve people's problems and not focused on necessarily the price every day. Just as the same way that I would recommend to any friend of mine to buy an ETF and hold it for the next 30 years if they want to retire with, some money in the bank, and not try to buy and sell stock every day. And to me, that means, like I was saying earlier, building this plumbing, this infrastructure layer that allows people access to financial services without needing to worry about the price of any specific digital asset any specific day.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andy, for coming today. I really enjoyed our chat.
Thank you for having me.